Hello and welcome to Stories and Lessons. My name is Amy Ebert and I'm your host for today's podcast.
My name is Brad Ebert. I'm your co-host.
Welcome back to the show. Today we are honored to welcome soccer coaching legend Jay Martin. As the head coach of Ohio Wesleyan University, Jay holds the esteemed title of the sport's winningest coach in NCAA history with an impressive 762 career victories and counting. He's authored a book highlighting his tactics and methods to create a winning culture, Lessons from the Best Coach. Be sure to check the show notes for a link to purchase his book. Join us as we explore his journey and uncover his secrets to continuous success.
When I started this journey, I never planned to win 700 plus games. It just kind of happened.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I'd like to get started with just hearing about your upbringing, how it was growing up, and how you got introduced to athletics.
I'm the oldest of 10 kids, born in South Boston, Massachusetts, a nice, good old Irish Catholic family. I'm the first in my family to go to college. 3 of my 4 grandparents were from Ireland. And, they didn't know what college was, and neither really did my parents. I played 3 sports in high school, and my entire goal was to go to Springfield College in Western Massachusetts, which is a big jock school, because every coach and PE teacher that I had growing up was a Springfield College grad. And this part of the story has helped me in my coaching. I didn't get into Springfield because my coaches told me that I didn't have to worry about academics, that I was such a good athlete that I'd get a scholarship and blah, 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 blah. Well, that turned out to be wrong. And trust me, that I've carried that with me in my job for 40 plus years, and we can get into that if you care.
Sure.
So I went to Dean Junior College for 1 year, and I don't think it was that I was stupid. It's just that sports athletics were my priority and not academics, which I see every single day in this country, which is really a problem. Brad, I don't know if you were an athlete or whatever, but today's athletes, in high school, they're walking down the hallway and the teachers say, "Hey, Brad, great game last night," blah, blah, blah. And I always ask the athletes, do they ever say great math test yesterday? And the answer is no, they don't. No. And so our young men in high school get this perverse notion that athletics are more important than academics. And by the way, I see that happening with women today, which I think is good and bad. It's good because women's sports are rightfully getting their due, but it's bad because it's the same trap our young men have fallen into. So I went to Springfield College. I played soccer, which I was never any good at. I played basketball and lacrosse, and I was an All-American in lacrosse. When I graduated from Springfield, I moved to Munich, Germany, and I played professional basketball in Germany for 4 years, 2 years in Munich and 2 years in Dusseldorf. But that's when I really got into soccer. My job was in northern Munich. I don't know if you know Munich, near the old Olympic grounds. And Bayern Munich and Munich 1860 practiced in southern Munich. So my job didn't start until the afternoon, so I would go down every morning and watch Bayern Munich, who in those days, Franz Beckenbauer, Gerd Müller, Sepp Maier, the entire German national team was on Bayern Munich. And I really, really got into soccer. I was absolutely no good in soccer. I'm still no good, and I see no hope for me to get any better at this point in my life. My basketball coach in high school gave me the choice of soccer or cross country to get fit for basketball. And I just couldn't see myself running through the New England woods in my underwear in November, so I decided to play soccer. But I started too late. That was my junior year, and I wasn't any good. That's how it is. But I was immersed in a soccer culture, and I was living in Munich for the '74 World Cup. I went to the final game, and soccer impressed me. And European sport impressed me. Again, a big factor in my mentality is European sport. Then I went to Ohio State University. In between Munich and Dusseldorf, I got my master's degree at Ohio State. Then I went back and finished up my PhD. I did an internship at Ohio Wesleyan. Ohio Wesleyan's 20 miles or so north of Columbus. And they hired me. Unfortunately, my predecessor passed away when I was doing the internship, and they hired me to be the soccer and lacrosse coach in August of 1977. Then I was lacrosse coach for 9 years, then I became athletic director for 21 years, and now I'm doing what I've wanted to do since ninth grade, and that is I'm coaching and teaching at Ohio Wesleyan University. I think it's my, I'm not sure, my 46th or 47th year there.
That's great. Do you think the cross training that you did, obviously doing the soccer, that obviously still probably was beneficial for you with basketball, with learning some
Yes.
footwork with the soccer?
No question. And my oldest son, Ryan, was an All-American at Ohio Wesleyan soccer player, and now he's a professional coach with the USL at Loudoun United. I wouldn't let him play age group and this travel soccer and all that stuff. And he's still mad at me today about that. But he played soccer, he played basketball, he played lacrosse, and I really believe, as you just said, that cross-training helps you learn in all of those sports. And so I am very much anti one-sport player as a kid. I just think it's absolutely ridiculous. And unfortunately, I see that every day here in Central Ohio, and I try to talk people out of it, but that kid's going to get a college scholarship and he's going to play pro and all that stuff. Clueless, absolutely clueless.
A lot of people are of that school of thought that specialize. And you can't talk them out of it because it's the parents that have
Correct.
this in their thought process. We personally are cross-training
Right.
school of thought ourselves. Our son plays all the sports. He plays a couple of them competitively. But then we take breaks whenever we need to. If he wants to try some other sports, guess what? He's going to try those sports. So what are some of do you think that the people are setting themselves up to fail by specializing? Or do the ones that have the cross-training maybe have more options later, or just they don't have the burnout?
Burnout is the key. I think young kids, both male and female, who specialized at a too early age, yes, they're going to get burned out, and things are not going to end well for them. I've just seen that. I mean, I don't have research in front of me, but anecdotally, I see that all the time. And the burnout comes usually from external factors like parents, coaches, and so on and so forth. And it's just not realistic. And what happens is, one of the tenets of my coaching philosophy is fun. And what happens is, for those young kids who are specializing, it's no longer fun, and they quit. The number one, I don't know if you probably know this, between 13 and 15 in our country, 75% of the boys and girls quit sports, and that's absolutely awful. And the number one reason they quit sports is it is no longer fun, and that is just terrible
And that's kind of the whole reason for playing sports. It's called playing a sport.
That's the only reason. They went back to their second soccer practice because they had fun at the first. And they keep going back because they had fun until they don't anymore. And it's really, really too bad. We had a young team here in Delaware. They call themselves the Baby Bishops, which made me upset but anyway. And they wore red and black like we do. And they were a U12 team. And their coach quit the U.S. Postal Service to be their full-time coach, U12s. And they played in all these tournaments, and they won all these tournaments. And, they had those badges on their bags and all this stuff. And so I followed them. 3 of the kids played in high school. Only 1 played in college. And the rest stopped playing soccer. And to me, that's a great example, a terrible example, but an example of when you put too much pressure on these kids who are U12s, and you're asking them to specialize and not play other sports, it's a disaster. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, a lot of coaches are offended when they know that your son is cross-training, or you don't want to play 11 months out of the year.
With the club coaches, yes.
With the club coaches, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I hate to say this, but coaching in our country is not very good. Um, because here's what happens. Most of the coaches were probably successful playing their sport. And but very few coaches in this country make an effort to do any research on what is good and bad for kids and how to teach and coach sports. Very, very few. In Europe and in Canada, if you're going to coach a youth team, you have to get a certificate. You have to go to classes, and you have to take classes in first aid and pedagogy and rules and tactics and all these other things. And you carry a little card. And before the game starts, the referee will ask for your card. If you don't have it, you're off the bench. But you see, our country, as you know, is the number one volunteer country in the world. And many of the volunteers don't, frankly, know what they're talking about. I wish they'd take some time and read some books, maybe like my book, I don't know, but
Yeah.
read some books to give them an idea of what coaching has changed. The my way or the highway coaching no longer applies to this group of young kids today. It just doesn't apply. They're too smart for that. And leadership has changed. You know, the great man theory, the my way or the highway with leaders has also changed. But many coaches, even in my department, I'm sorry to say at Ohio Wesleyan, many coaches haven't changed with that. You know, coaches coach like their coach coached them, if that makes any sense.
It does.
And if they don't do any research and if they don't work at their craft, they are not going to change, and coaching is not going to change in this country.
We're looking at your book, of course, Lessons from the Best Coach.
I'm embarrassed about that cover. It was
Are
supposed,
you?
Yes, it was supposed
Okay.
to be the best coach you've never heard of. And the people who in the marketing of publishing the book changed the title without asking me, and I'm still upset about that because
Wow.
well, it's quite presumptuous of me to say that I'm the best coach. I mean, that's just not me. That I don't do that. And so
Yeah.
I was very upset about it. But anyway, I just wanted to clarify that.
But we've been looking at it. We've been reading it. And that's one of the things that you brought up was there is, it's so prevalent, the my way or the highway mentality. And I will say that, we've maybe been a little vocal with some of the coaches where doesn't seem to be, these are little kids, like it starts at like 5. I'm not kidding
Yeah.
you. It's crazy
Oh,
with
I know.
pulling kids out of the game. And so, and I do remember at one point, I don't remember what page it was, but I do remember at one point you even said soccer in particular is one of those games where there's going to be more mistakes that occur than the right thing happens. So how could you be possibly pulling kids out of a game every time they make a mistake? And not all kids, just certain kids. And then having the my way or the highway opposed to the, your methodology, which is more so they're all setting their own individual goals. There's team goals. Tell us more about that.
Yes, a couple of things about that. When I tell my classes, and I teach a class in sports psychology, and I teach a class called Leadership and Coaching. They think I know something about coaching, so I teach it. And I have these frank discussions with the students in my classes, and I tell them the next time their coach yells at them for making a mistake, I want them to ask the coach if he or she ever made a mistake. All right, I think that's fair. And you know what the answer is. But coaches are control freaks, and it's just awful. There are 4 theories of motivation. One of them is called the competency theory, which says that if you as an athlete feel competent going into a game, you will have greater confidence and you will play at a higher level, period. So why do coaches yell and scream at their kids and ruin their feeling of competence? Why do they do that? It doesn't make sense. And why do they yank a kid for making a mistake? Every sport, mistakes happen, especially with youth players. I mean, they're learning the game. But the coaches, it's very disturbing to me. I get very upset about it. And that's an example of what coaches don't know, because they don't take the time to look at the theories of motivation, for example, or whatever. if they knew that, then I think, hopefully, maybe, that they would change their mind and they would see that my whole coaching philosophy is all about empowerment and relationships. If more coaches, and my pitch is, and I talk to a lot of coaching groups, as you can imagine, but not only soccer, but local high schools and so on. My pitch is, what I do works. Look at the record. I mean, I'm not making that record up. That's in stone. So what I do, you can be very, very successful. And more than that, you will make the team something more than a team to the players. It'll be an experience. It'll be a positive experience. And coaches just don't, as I said, 75% of kids between 13 and 15 quit.
I thought it was even younger than that. Yeah.
It maybe it's 12 and 15. I don't know, but in that
Yeah.
range. But they quit. The point is they quit, and that's just unacceptable.
So coming from Germany, you understood what the foundation was to run a good practice. I'm sure there was a culture there that makes some sense. And then you come to the States. I'm sure that was eye-dropping for you to see the difference, right, with how people are coaching here and maybe the lack of culture.
Let me say, at the time I was in Germany, the German coaches, as you may imagine, were the my way or the highway type coaches.
Okay.
I think what impacted me in my philosophy was two men who are my mentors. The first is my father, who knew nothing about sports. I've already told you I'm the oldest of 10. I think he ran track in high school. I'm not even sure of that. But all the sports that we played, my brothers, the three oldest boys, all the sports we played, he had no clue about anything. But what he did know is that the relationships can make or break a team. And he was so good at creating relationships between himself and these kids at all levels when I was playing. 8s, 9s, 10s, it doesn't matter. When he passed away a number of years ago, you should have seen the line of people at the funeral home. And these men who were in their 30s and 40s would come up to me and say, "I'm sorry your father's passed. I was 8 years old on his baseball team. I'll never forget him. He's been one of the most important people in my life." And that hit home for me. I mean, I could see that. And as I said, he knew nothing about soccer or basketball, or certainly nothing about lacrosse, but he knew nothing about it. So I learned early on that relationships are really, really important. And then the second man was my high school basketball coach, who went to Springfield College, and I wanted to be him. That's why it's funny that I'm not a basketball coach, but I told you already how that worked out. But and he was all about empowering his players. I mean, he would ask me and others after practice. He'd say, "Hey, Jay, that second activity we did in practice today, here's what we were trying to accomplish. Did we accomplish it? Or should I throw it out and try something else?" And that empowered me, and that made that basketball team more than a team. It made it a program to me, and it made it a very, very important part of my life. So I carried over those kinds of things into my coaching philosophy. I want my players looking forward to coming to practice every single day. And when they leave the facility, I want a smile on their face so that they come back again tomorrow. And when we do camps, I tell most of the camps are run by my players. I have a phrase called catch them doing something good. I want them to catch every kid in their group for every session, catch those kids doing something good. Even Joe Little Bag of Donuts, who probably shouldn't be playing soccer, but I want him back tomorrow. That's what I want. And I want to hopefully instill in him that fitness is important, games are important, and so on. Catch him doing something good. So from the beginning, I had those two mentors. And then in Springfield, I had a lot of my way or the highway coaches. but I just I hit the delete button and most of the stuff they were trying to do because it didn't make any sense. But the problem is this: they think that's the way to motivate and that's the way to teach, and it's just not. It's not how it works. Believe me.
I would think the consistency would be tough to maintain as a coach with that way of coaching, the my way or the highway, because
Exhausting.
you're definitely going to be relying on talent to overcome, because you're going to have seasons where there's roadblocks and things like that. Those teams aren't going to be able to overcome those things as easily with the way they're coaching.
That's correct. Any coach can have a winning season every now and then, and maybe even win, the conference championship occasionally. But the consistent coaches who are, hopefully I'm in that category, who are successful year in and year out, do it differently. I mean, look at Steve Kerr with the Golden State Group. Look at Greg Popovich with San Antonio. Look at Pete Carroll until recently with the Seattle Group. Mike Krzyzewski with Duke. He and I have a relationship that we've talked many, many times about these things. All of these guys are relationships people. And I think it's fair to say that all of these coaches have had very, very good careers and consistent success. Consistent success is really, really hard. But it's not that hard if you just change your mentality a little bit.
We hope you're enjoying today's episode as much as we loved creating it for you. And speaking of creating content, producing this podcast takes time, effort, and resources. We invest our heart and soul into bringing you valuable and entertaining episodes week after week. If you've been enjoying our show and would like to show your support, we have a fantastic way for you to do so. You can now support the show by making a small contribution through our Support the Show link. It's really easy. Just click on the Support the Show link in the show notes section, and it takes you right to our donation page. By donating, you'll be helping us cover various production costs, upgrading our equipment, and securing amazing guests for future episodes. Every little bit helps us tremendously in elevating the quality of our content. The platform is a user-friendly website where you can contribute easily. Plus, it's a fun way for us to connect with you and show our gratitude directly. We'll be sending some exclusive bonus content, behind-the-scenes footage, and special shout-outs to our supporters. So if you appreciate what we do and want to be part of this amazing journey, consider buying us a virtual cup of coffee or two. Your support means the world to us. Together, we can make this podcast even better and continue delivering top-notch episodes for your enjoyment. We appreciate you for listening and thank you in advance for your support. Now, back to the episode.
I was thinking about last night with like the blue blood programs. I was wondering, do all these coaches, are they implementing what's in your book? I feel like maybe some of these coaches are relying on just the school and the talent, than their coaching. So I see these coaches yelling, screaming at the kids during the games on the basketball sidelines. I just find it perplexing that they've had that much success. It's more based on the talent that they just were able to receive.
I think that's a good question, and I think it's how you define success. If you define success as wins and losses, then maybe they've had some success. But if you define success as development of the players and creating a love of the game with the players so that they'll come back and they'll play basketball at noon when they're working 20 years from now, then my guess is you won't see that success with those types of coaches. They will drive players out of the game, which I think is terrible. I think one of the responsibilities we have as coaches is to introduce the importance of physical fitness for the rest of your life. So if I drive a kid out of playing soccer, he's not going to be doing anything physical
Active
the rest of his life. And that's terrible. That's a terrible thing. So, I mean, for example, we haven't done sprints in probably 30 years because they're no fun and they're counterproductive. They don't work in terms of increasing fitness, but not all coaches understand and know that. Again, because they haven't studied any physiology to understand what the new types of training methods are.
What are some other things that people are cutting out, or that those of you who are studying physiology, you have winning across the board, meaning you're winning in stats and then winning with your players and winning as a team and a winning culture. So what are some other things that you're cutting out or not doing because it's counterproductive or just not helpful and not fun?
One of you mentioned goals a little while ago. we've been doing goal setting since the first day I stepped on the campus of Ohio Wesleyan University. And I think goal setting, first of all, it's the number one strategy to increase, develop, improve intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is far more powerful than extrinsic motivation, as you know. And so everything we do in our program is about intrinsic motivation, everything that we do. And so I think if you can, and first of all, what happened, freshmen are clueless when they come to us. They've never had a coach like me and my assistants. They don't know what's going on. And they don't have much intrinsic motivation because nobody's ever taken the time to work with them on that. So when I give my little speech about goal setting to these coaching clinics, and we do goal setting in preseason, we do it at the end of the season, we do it getting ready. We start our spring season next week. First thing we'll do on Monday will be goal setting. When I tell these coaches this as an example about my goal setting program, inevitably, the first question, hand goes up, first question is, Jay, that's really great, but man, doesn't that take a lot of time? I go, yeah, it does. I meet with every kid individually 4 times a year, and we go over the goals. My response is, it does. How do you like winning? How much do you like winning? Right? What do you do? So what happens is the majority of coaches, and this happens even in our department at Ohio Wesleyan. So we hire a new coach, I hate to say this, a new young coach, because that means I'm an old coach, but we hire a new coach, and all they know about coaching is what? The 4 to 6 practice that they just finished for 4 years at their institution in their sport. They don't understand. I've got a whole bunch of guys who are out coaching, high school, club, college, but whatever. My pros, I've got 2 guys, my son. A team is the practice, 4 to 6 in the afternoon. A program is the other 22 hours. And many, many coaches ignore the other 22 hours. So they'll show up at 3:45, totally unprepared. They'll do whatever's in their mind, and they'll leave at 6, get in their car and drive away. And that's the end of it until tomorrow when they do it again. But that's not the end of good coaching at all. Good coaching happens outside of the practice. We are never unprepared for practice. Never. Practice to me is the most important part of coaching. It's the only time when players get better. You don't get better in games. What you do in games is you measure where you are, and then you go back to practice to try to improve on it. That's what you should do.
Seems like a simple system.
Pardon me?
Seems like a pretty simple system to base it on that. Yeah.
It is simple. What we do is not hard, and it may be time consuming, but I'm like, you're getting paid to coach. Why don't you coach? And so we do a whole bunch of little things. For example, 2011 we won the national championship in San Antonio, and 8 sophomores on our team played in that game. I think four of them started and 4 of them came off the bench or thereabouts. So the conventional wisdom says, okay, this team's going to be pretty good the next 2 or 3 years, right? Because these guys have this experience, blah, blah, blah. Well, the next 2 years, we won our conference and we got in the NCAA tournament and we lost in the first round to 2 teams that weren't as good as us. So what I realized after all these years of coaching is that these players didn't have experience because they don't take the time to think about the game that they played last night. The game is over and they move on to the next game. So what I implemented is, and I tell this again, and coaches go, Jay, this is so time consuming. The day after every game by noon, the players have to send me an email and they have to answer 3 questions. What went right? What went wrong? How can I get better in the next game? And they have to answer that individually as a player and as a team because I want them to understand the team. And the answers are great. I mean, they're really good. Coaches don't give enough credit to their players about how smart they are and how much they know that's going on, and they do that. And so we got to have it at noon. I read them all. I answer every single one of them. Unfortunately, not always that day, but within a couple of days. I answer them all and say, hey, Rick, great point here. So how are you going to fix that in the next game? What are you going to do to get better in the next game? Coaches always say, okay, we're going to get better in practice today. But they never tell the players how they're going to get better. And it's not the coaching. It's not the coaching. This might be a good time. My philosophy of coaching it's in the book somewhere. It's quite simple. And that is, first and foremost, I know that coaches don't develop players. And when I say this at clinics, I was booed about 5 years ago at the Ohio Boys and Girls High School Soccer Coaches Convention because I said that. Because every high school coach, when they send a kid to Division I, it's because of them, the coach. I developed that kid, he's in Division I. And every college coach that I know that sends a kid to the pros, it's because I developed that kid, he's in the pros. Nothing could be further from the truth. And because only players can develop players. That's it. Only players can make themselves better. And as soon as a player understands that, then the sooner they're going to get better. So what's my job? My job is to create an environment in which they can get better. Hopefully that's the coaching. And they want to get better. That's the motivation that they bring to the table. And that takes a little bit because, as I said, freshmen don't understand this. They're waiting for me to walk out before practice and tell them what to do. That's not how they get better. And I don't do that anyway. So they're not going to, because I know I don't develop them. They can only develop themselves. And so the environment at Ohio Wesleyan is motivating, it's challenging, and it's fun. Every day we have fun. So how do we do that? There's a red team and a gray team or whatever, and everything we do in practice, we keep score. Everything. So at the end of practice, there's a winning team and a losing team. The winning team gets their picture taken, and Matt, my assistant, puts it on social media. I'm not capable of doing that. And the losing team picks up the gear, cleans the locker room, does the laundry, whatever, and then we do it again tomorrow. Because you know this with your son. Your son's competitive, and he likes to compete against his friends, and he likes to kick his friend's butt. Fair enough?
Yep.
So we use that mentality, and that's how we work on our fitness and our technique and our tactics. We work on that. We take advantage of the fact that our players are competitive and they want to beat their roommate.
Yeah.
That gives them bragging rights for 24 hours, and then we do it again tomorrow. And we've been doing that forever. But you know, all of these none of these little things are difficult. But coaches love to hear themselves talk. And I read an article just yesterday about in German, an article from the German Soccer Federation. And this very good German coach said, the less a coach talks, the more the players will learn, because they have to learn it on their own in the end. I mean, I'm clearly older than you guys, but when you were young, you didn't have coaches around all the time, did you? You played in the neighborhoods?
Neighborhood games,
especially during when I grew up.
Correct. And that's how you learned. And that's how I learned. You know, my street in South Boston would play against the next street. There wouldn't be an adult within 10 miles.
No.
And we played all sports. And that's how we learned how to catch a baseball or whatever the game was. That's how we learned. You don't learn by somebody telling you how to do something. That's ridiculous. So it's a little bit different in our camp situations, but not much. Not much. The less talking that we do, the better it is for the players, because we're forcing them to learn on their own. We're forcing them to do that.
Yeah. And the competition amongst each other will push them to do that.
Correct. Yes. And it'll push them to do it under pressure. Not 100% game pressure, but enough pressure that they can carry over to a game situation.
Like peer pressure used in a positive way.
Correct. Really. And that's how it is. And as I said, we want our guys leaving the facility every night with a smile on their face and looking forward to practice tomorrow. And that's how we build relationships with our guys. I'm sorry about this. Let me give you let's go back to San Antonio. On Friday night, national semifinal, we played Montclair State of New Jersey. We beat them, I think, doesn't matter, 4-0 or whatever it was. In the stands that night, there were over 70 former players who flew into San Antonio on their own dime to watch our team play. They knew nobody on the field, but they knew Ohio Wesleyan was competing for a national championship. So we win on Friday night, and 80 plus more flew in on Saturday morning to watch us play in the final on Saturday night. So when we played Calvin College of Michigan in the final on Saturday night, there were over 150 former Ohio Wesleyan soccer players in the stands watching the current team win the national championship. And my wife came up to me, she's infinitely smarter than I am, and she said, "Jay, this is what you've been doing your whole career, and it's got very little to do with soccer." Now, the story the moral of that story is not Jay Martin winning a national championship, because in fact I didn't, the team did, but it's about what this team means to the guys who played on it, even 20 years later. My son is the coach at Loudoun United in the USL, so his opening home game is Saturday. So Joanne and I are flying out tomorrow for the weekend. And some of my former players have made it an alumni get-together. So we have about 30 players from the Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia area who played at Ohio Wesleyan, who are going to come and watch my son play, and we'll have a couple of beers. But they do that because of what the program means to them. And in fact, I just looked at the list before this call. In fact, there are 6 or 7 guys from my first team at Ohio Wesleyan that I'll see again this weekend. And again, that's not about me. It's about the program and how meaningful the program can be. Now, does that mean I've gotten along with every young man on the team? Probably not. I will say we've had very few guys transfer out over 47 years, very few. And usually when they transfer out, it's an academic reason, going to a medical school program or whatever. But I'm sure there are some guys who, I've coached a lot of guys, so I'm not 100% perfect. I'm sure there are some guys who still feel that they didn't play enough and so on. I think that's going to happen. I don't lose much sleep over it. But the majority of guys love this program, and they loved it because we had fun. I mean, even when we lost in the final game twice, which wasn't fun, but the journey to the final game was fun that year, even though we weren't successful. So, I tell coaches these little things, and that's why I decided to write the book, because the book is what we do. I mean, that's a blueprint for how we run our program.
And is it fair to say that the thought process with creating this culture is, since you're saying you're not necessarily the one making this happen for them, but is it along the thought process of you're facilitating an environment that can be conducive for thriving culture? It's more along the lines of facilitating versus being a boss, yeah.
Yes, I think that's a good way of putting it, yes. I mean, I make sure that I talk to every guy on the team every single day. And it's usually nothing to do with soccer. I mean, we're a small school. We've got about 2,000 kids, so I know all the professors. I'm a professor. I know all the professors. So, hey, Joe, how was that econ test you had yesterday? How'd you do? Hey, Chris, how's that paper coming along? Do you need any help on that? I can get you a tutor, blah, blah, blah. Nothing about soccer. I walk around, I do before practice, after practice, during practice, on the sideline. I talk to these guys because I want them to know that I care about them more than just what they do on the field. I mean, people ask me, I've had some success, as you know. People have asked me, what's the most successful part of your career? What's, the highlight of your career? And they think I'm giving them a line of baloney when I say it's on Mother's Day every year when we have graduation and I see the seniors walk across the stage and get their diploma. I said, that's the highlight of my career. I've only missed 2 graduations in 47 years, and they're pretty boring. But but I've got to be there for those seniors. I just think that's important.
What makes you different is that you have all these alumni coming to your national championship games, coming to alumni games. Well, I'm sure the My Way or the Highway coaches, they aren't showing up after graduation, or if they even graduated. Some of the graduation rates are low, some of these coaches as well. They're in major sports.
Correct. 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, we had our 50th anniversary. 308 former players showed up for the weekend. To put that in context, a year later, the football team, who's been here longer, and as a result have had more players because football rosters are too big anyway, 108 showed up, football guys. And I keep using that as an example because football is notoriously my way or the highway, and yelling and screaming and so on and so forth. And so 308 versus 108, and they had more alums and whatever. I mean, I think that comment was, I hope, right on the money.
I wanted to go over just a couple of things that you have specifically in the book. One, you actually already touched on, that where you say on page 20, if only players can develop players, then what is the role of the coach? It's the coach's job to create an environment where the player can get better, the coaching, and wants to get better, the motivation. So that kind of brings me back to the intrinsic motivation again about the competitiveness. What do you have to say to, we've seen some people do this. We'll notice the difference sometimes in kids, how they play certain games and how they won't in other games. And then usually when you talk to the parents, sometimes they, I kid you not, you may be already aware of this, are actually paying their children to get goals. They're paying them, which I feel is taking away their intrinsic motivation.
You know, in all my years, I've never heard of that, but I'm not surprised, but you're 100% correct. That's all about extrinsic motivation. And the kid should be playing the game because he or she loves the game and loves to play and loves his or her teammates. I just think that's just so important. I mean, in the book, you know that my guys call me Jay, not Coach. I hate to be called Coach. And I think that's part of the relationship things. But we work on intrinsic motivation all the time. For example, I have never one time in 40 plus years been in the weight room to watch an Ohio Wesleyan soccer player lift weights. Not once. For 2 reasons. The first is, believe it or not, I have other things to do than watch somebody lift a dumbbell. But more importantly, secondly, if they're in the weight room doing their thing, whatever it is, they're doing it to make themselves better, which will make the team better. That's called intrinsic motivation. If I'm in there, they're doing it because I'm there, and that's right. Extrinsic motivation. I've never been to the winter running sessions. I've never been to indoor soccer in the winter. Never. Because I want the guys to develop this love to play, and I want them to develop their intrinsic motivation. And so when we get out next week in the spring, I mean, I've done this a long time. It'll take me 10 minutes to figure out somebody who didn't do the fitness program. I mean, maybe even a shorter period than that. And so that person still needs to work on intrinsic motivation. And unfortunately, for some people, it's a tough sell because of the example you just gave us, that that's unbelievable. The parents are paying them to get goals and so on and so forth. Absolutely ridiculous, and it just doesn't make sense. You know, our football team. I never played. I mean, you can't see my body, but I've never played football one down in my life. But you know, on Mondays they give out these little stickers for their helmets. You've probably seen it on TV and so on and so forth. And the stickers are, you know, if you had a good tackle or if you whatever. But if the team loses, they don't give out the stickers. And I asked the football coaches why. You still had a game, and some good things had to have happened. Maybe you lost, who cares? But why don't you do that? So you see so these kids, even in college, our kids, I mean, they're not like Ohio State or anything or UNLV. So now they're playing for this silly 3-cent sticker, and the coach says, "Well, that's going to make them want to win." I'm like, "No, it probably isn't, but you can keep doing it," and he'll keep doing it because that's what football guys do. And I go, "No, it won't. It won't really. But if that's what you think, that's what you think." And unfortunately, we're kind of a society maybe of too much extrinsic motivation and not enough intrinsic motivation. But that's an editorial comment. You can take it or leave it.
By not micromanaging the athletes, that gives them empowerment, is how I see it, by not micromanaging. And then you're going to be
Correct.
revising goals with them along the way anyway. It's going to become obvious if something is falling short, if it's their fitness or their weak foot or whatever the example might be. That's something you guys will go over, routinely anyway. So,
and it's on them, not on me. So we'll start practice. If you were to come to one of our practices 30 minutes early, we start at 4, except on lab days when it's like 4:30. We start at 4. If you were to come at 3:30 in most of our practices, you would see our players doing something. They're not standing around talking to each other, and they're not standing around waiting for me to tell them what to do. They're working on their goals. So maybe the forwards are shooting on the goalkeeper. Maybe the corner kick taker is practicing corner kicks. Maybe the midfielders are playing small-sided games, and so on. That's how they get better. And there have been days when my assistant coach and I will stand there, and I'll say, "Matt, we're not going to have practice today. Let them go." And just so for an hour and a half, they'll continue working on their goals, having fun, competing with each other in different types of activities, but learning. They don't need me, because I was an awful player. I told you that. They don't need me to tell them how to play, because they're better than me. Trust me. So it's all about intrinsic motivation. The freshmen, however, are usually standing there waiting for me to tell them what to do. So I have to get the seniors to get them organized to understand this mentality of getting better. So, and as I said, it takes a little bit of time with the
Also, because the freshmen are also coming from most likely public schools too, where they've been instructed. Everything's instruction.
Correct. Coaches love to talk, and they love to talk in practice. And practice is where you should be playing, not talking. I mean, come on.
That's always bothered me a lot when the coaches are just talking for prolonged periods of time. The kids have an hour and a half to train.
Kids are getting bored.
Micromanaging every single thing and stopping the play, and it really annoys me.
It's annoying. And it's annoying to the players, too, if you think about it. I mean, it turns
they
them
want
off
to play.
totally. Right, they want to play. Yeah. And yes, they'll make mistakes. And yes, and again, another example. So let me think here. So maybe we're doing an activity, maybe we have 6 attackers attacking 4 backs and a goalkeeper. So what I'll say is, okay, guys, we're going to do this for 90 seconds, and let's see what happens. That's it. Those are the instructions. So we do it for 90 seconds, and we see how many goals were scored or not. I blow the whistle. Now, if you say 90 seconds, you better stop at 90 seconds. Because that's also motivating. If the guys know that it's going to be 90 seconds, they're going to work hard for 90 seconds. But if you say 90 seconds and you let it go and go and go, they're not going to work because they want to kind of rest to make sure. So anyway, 90 seconds goes, I blow the whistle, bring them in. I don't use a whistle really. I stop it, bring them in. Okay, guys, how'd you do? How did you do? Now, I could tell them how they did, but that doesn't work. Okay, look, you play for 90 seconds, a player. Jay, we play for 90 seconds. We only had 3 shots. I said, okay, well, let's take that 90 seconds and put that into a 90-minute game. How many shots would you have in 90 minutes? So you didn't do badly. Well, we didn't score a goal. I said, okay, the average goal is 2.1 in a soccer game, and you usually don't score that in the first 90 seconds. So guys, what can we do to get better? What can we do for you guys to have some more shots and maybe a goal? And they tell me what they could do. That's how they learn. And it would be easy for me to stop. Okay, Greg, you should have done this. Joe, you should have done. But that's not how they learn. And so we go back. Okay, we're going to go another 90 seconds. You ready? Tweet, go. And so we do that over and over and over. So the guys are teaching themselves. Because, in soccer, we don't have timeouts. We don't have quarters. We only have a halftime to make any kinds of adjustments, which usually don't work anyway. And so they got to learn how to coach themselves and know what's good, what's bad, what they can do to get better, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, you're giving them the ownership.
Correct. First thing I say every year, guys, this is your team. I have tenure. I'm not going anywhere. That's just how it is.
Yeah, I'm sure they have a lot of fun with you.
I hope.
Yeah, you had 21 years as a director, a sports director. You go into what skill sets you acquired with that and how that maybe improved you as a coach. Because that's definitely a big responsibility to run athletics department.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the biggest thing I learned as athletic director was better communication. It was important to me that I spoke to every coach in the department every day, just like I do today with my players. Hey, how you doing? How's recruiting going? How was that game last night? Blah, blah, blah. So I really learned the importance of communication. However, my leadership style was the same. It was the coaches. I'm not going to tell them how to coach. If they have a question, I'll answer it. But it's up to them. I used to have every Wednesday or Thursday, whatever, I used to have, after lunch, I would give a little presentation on things like that are in the book. And they could take it or leave it. I'm not going to force it on anybody, and some coaches did take it and still do things like that today. Some know a lot more than I do, so they didn't take it, and that's fine. But I think, Brad, that's a really good question. I think number one was the necessity of good, honest, open communication. It's a tough job in Division III, athletic director. That's one of the reasons I stepped down. The resources are tight, and I heard myself say no more often than I really like to say no. And so I said, I'm, as I said a moment ago, I'm back to doing what I wanted to do originally, and that's teaching coach in college.
Yeah, I think the budget constraints would definitely be challenging, right? Smaller university, yeah.
Absolutely.
So page 26, you talk about your posting the core values in the locker room. So obviously, this is not something that people have if you're anything before college, anything as far as youth sports go. If you have like a quick, if you're just coaching like a 6-week, 12-week season and that's all you get, maybe you have a rec season and that's all you're going to get with these kids because, like some of our rec leagues, you aren't allowed to keep a team together. So right. How would you adjust that strategy for people that just, want to coach their kids' team for the season or that kind of thing?
Well, even if the season is short, I think you can do this, and I think you should do this. This is the first thing we do in preseason every single year. And again, it's run by the captains. I'm not even in the room. They take care of it. But at the youth level, the coach would probably have to get involved in some way. But I think in the first practice, a brief explanation of what values are and how important they are and how important they're going to be for us, this team going forward. And then maybe some of the older kids or the obvious leaders or whatever, we can ask them to, okay, what kind of values would you like to see in our team? Well, I don't want us to yell at the ref. I want us to be on time for practice. These types of things. I think you can do it. You have to modify it a little bit. I think in the book I put a picture of our triangle, our pyramid with our values and goals and all those other things. We do that every single year. And but I think you can do it in a shorter kind of way. But I just think it's so important because all of a sudden at halfway through the season, the big leading scorer comes to practice late, and you can say, "Hey, Joe, your value was being on time. What's going on? We have a big game tomorrow or this weekend or whatever it is. Is this going to continue? Joe, these are your values. They weren't mine. I didn't set the values." And that's why we have the guys set them. So, that first week in October, the dog days of the season when the guys are tired and there are some injuries and our practice is terrible, I'll stop the practice, I'll bring them in and I'll say, okay, guys, your value was that you wanted to win every game in the conference. Well, tomorrow night we're playing so-and-so in our conference. Now, if you don't get better here in practice, we're going to lose. It's your decision. So we either get better for the next hour and take care of it, or we lose. Your choice. And, that's the end of it. I don't yell and scream, and that usually works. They usually get some energy and a little bit more excited going forward.
Yeah, great.
I think there'd be a lot more accountability when you have the kids running that and the leaders of the team helping structure the culture of the team. There'll be more accountability. Kids will show up to practice.
Yeah, no question. And I think, the captains who run these sessions, they're learning how to lead. They're learning how to communicate. The other players are learning how to communicate and follow. So a whole bunch of things are going on in that situation, which are far more powerful than me. I could come up with values, for the team, but I never will, and I never have. It would be easy for me, but then they're my values, not the team's values. And I think there's a huge difference. A buy-in, there's a thing about buying in if you do the values on your own. And again, it's relationships and it's empowerment. I'm empowering the guys to make their own values.
They need their why, not your why, right? They need to know what their why is.
Yeah. Exactly. Correct.
Well, thank you, Jay. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We've definitely gotten a lot of value. Where can people get in touch with you, and where can they get your book?
They could send my email. Can I give you the email? My email address?
If you're okay with that.
Yeah. My email is JAMARTIN at OWU, Ohio Wesleyan University.edu. It's the only one I have. So if they want something from me, if they have a question, I urge them to send me an email. The book is just starting in the second printing. So I don't know what that means, but it can't be all bad. But but I do know, I looked this morning and it still is on Amazon. It's at Barnes & Noble's. But bulk buyings, we've had some teams buy it some associations and organizations buy it for their coaches.
Ooh, good idea.
I don't think we have the bulk purchases yet because it's being printed. But individual purchases, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any place books are sold, it's being sold.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Having said that, if you haven't done so already, we are now accepting enrollments for Level Up Goal, our accountability program designed to support you in achieving your next goal. We've dedicated a significant amount of time and effort to create this program and will continue refining to ensure you receive massive value throughout your journey. Enrollment is currently available for a limited time. Here is the process to enroll and get started. Simply go to levelupgoal.com or click on the link in the description that takes you to the website where you can sign up and be a part of the coolest crew in town. Get in early because we are capping the amount of enrollment opportunities available, of course. For more stories and lessons, check out some of my other episodes in the series. Thank you for showing up and be well.